Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo, and welcome to this video lesson which is all about squaring up your shots. Now this picture taken in Florence is a typical example of what happens when people take architectural pictures. In order to get the height of the building in, you have to tilt the camera up, and in doing so you get these problems. You get these converging verticals, or the vertical lines slope inwards. Now this example's fine because it's been taken right from the centre of the building, but if you stand sort of further over to the right, you get converging horizontals as well, where the horizontal lines in the building aren't parallel and slope in or away from each other. Now fixing these things in camera is quite tricky. You have to get your lens absolutely level to the ground, you have to get the building absolutely square in the viewfinder, and you have to be back far enough, of course, to get the building in the shot. With a lot of lenses, if you get them parallel to the ground, you will crop out the top of the building, which is no good at all. The only lenses that can actually cope with this kind of problem are perspective control or tilt and shift lenses, and these tend to be very, very expensive and very specialized. So how do we fix this kind of thing? Well, the best way is to fix it in software. And in packages like Photoshop or indeed Elements, you can quickly change a problem like this, where a building's falling backwards, into a nice, square, true picture. It's actually pretty easy to do, and there are various ways of doing it as well. So in this video we're going to have a look at a couple of ways of doing it. One is using the transform command, and the other one is using a filter that's new to Elements 6 and 7 and Photoshop CS3, CS4, which is the correct camera distortion filter, or in Photoshop it's called the lens correction filter. So let's go back to our original leaning over image and see how we can go about fixing it. Well, the first thing we're going to look at is the transform command. This is in both packages, it's in Elements and it's in Photoshop, and it's pretty easy to use. What you need to do first and foremost is create a bit of room around the canvas. So if your picture is filling the frame and looking something like that, what you need to do is hold down the Control and the Alt key and hit the minus button just a couple of times. Something like that. That reduces the size of the picture in the frame and gives you some room around the edge to work with. The next thing we need to do is make a selection of the entire image, and the quickest way to do that is hold down the Control key and hit the A. Control and A, and you get marching ants all the way around the outside of the image. We're going to use another shortcut to go into transform mode, and what we're going to do is hold down Control and hit T. And that brings up the transform bounding box all the way around the outside of the image. Now what we have to do is go into Edit, Transform, Distort mode. You can do this longhand, but by far the quickest way is just to hold down the Control key on the keyboard. Hold that down and we can pull out these corner handles. What we're looking for is when we've got our verticals parallel to the vertical of the image. So we pull that one out a bit and we do the same over this side. That's the kind of thing. Oops, a bit more on that side. And we basically just pull the image into shape until we've got our vertical lines parallel with the vertical edges of the frame. Something like that. Need a little bit of room around the canvas here. Let's move that toolbox out the way. Just holding down Control and pulling that line out. That looks pretty good. I've got another vertical guide here with this lamppost, so I can see there that that's vertical. This side looks pretty good as well, maybe a touch more. You can see that by a process of trial and error, we can get things right. The horizontals don't look too bad at all in this particular image, so I think we're okay on horizontals. What we've done though is cause the building to appear a bit squat and squashed, so to redress that, we just need to pull in these side handles until it looks about right. Something like that looks okay. Yep, that's pretty good. I think we're just about there. Once you're happy with the transformation you've made, double click inside the bounding box, or indeed just click the tick, and the job's a good one. What you need to do now is just hit Control and D to lose the marching ants. And if you've got any areas hanging over like this where the image wasn't big enough to actually work, all you need to do is either repair those with the clone tool, or if that's too difficult, all you need to do is get out the crop tool, make sure it's set to no restriction up in the options bar, and then just draw around the image however you want to crop it. So something like that looks pretty good. Yeah, that's rather nice. We'll crop that lamppost out. Leave that chap in there. There we go. Double click and there's our image, nicely cropped and nicely squared up. So that's how to use the transform command to square up wonky buildings and leaning back architectural shots. But there's another filter found within Photoshop and Elements that's a bit more intuitive in the way you can use it. First though, of course, we've got to go back to our original, so I'm just going to hit Control and Z a few times just to get back to how we were with our leaning back shot. There we go. Okay, now in Elements, this filter can be found by going to Filter, Correct Camera Distortion. That brings up this dialog box. In Photoshop, you'll find it by going to Filter, Distort, Lens Correction, but you get pretty much the same animal up on screen. What we have are a couple of controls, the hand tool, which works in the normal way, and a zoom tool, which works in the normal way as well. We've then got a grid, which can be switched on and off, and of course, leaving it switched on means you can match up your horizontals and match up your verticals. Over on the right hand side, we've got Remove Distortion, which fixes barrel and pincushion distortion, like so. We then have Vignetting, or the vignette control, which allows you to darken or lighten the corners of the image. This allows you to correct for lenses that have perhaps vignetted and darkened the corners. You can actually reduce or completely correct that imperfection. You can adjust the midpoint of the vignette tool as well. Then we've got Perspective Control, which controls vertical perspective and allows you to kind of straighten things up in the vertical domain, or horizontal perspective, which allows you to correct converging horizontals, so we can twist from side to side in effect. Okay, moving down, we've got Angle, which allows you to sort of rotate the entire image within the frame, and then Scale, which allows you to make it smaller or bigger, as its name suggests. Okay, now let's work through and fix our wonky building picture. We've got the Elements command up here. You'll find there's a few more tools over on the left side in the Photoshop version, but there's nothing we can't get round, so we're using Elements here. Now if you've got full Photoshop, there'll be a Straighten tool up here which allows you to draw along one of the horizontals to square up. But what we can do is actually just adjust the angle to make sure our image is square. And if we zoom in, use the zoom tool and go in tight, we can see that there's a slight difference between the left and the right of the picture. If we just scroll along and we follow one of these lines along the grid, let's pick on this one here, we can see that that slopes slightly away from itself between left and right. It'd be easy for you to open up this image called Florence JPEG and check it on your own screen rather than on this version, but there's a slight difference. And if we actually change this angle just by a touch, let's try 0.2. That's just about got it. I know from doing this a few times it's actually 0.16 on this particular image, and that just rotates the picture. If we just double click the hand tool, you can see there we've got a bit of rotation going on that's just turned the image round and made the horizontals absolutely true at the base of the frame. So now we've got that bit right, what we need to do is check our horizontal perspective. Now this, where we've messed about with the sliders, they've drifted a bit, so let's just set these back to 0. There we go, everything on 0. Now, horizontal perspective, this of course skews it between the left and the right. And if you find that your horizontal lines in the image aren't parallel, i.e. they're a bit higher at one side than they are at the other, then that's where you need to use the horizontal perspective to kind of get the building straightened up. Now I can zoom in, and actually this image is okay because we've shot in the center of the image. It's not too bad at all. And I can just hold down the space bar and use this line as a guide, and you can see that that's pretty good. It's not worth worrying about really. But if yours does have a dramatic problem in its horizontal perspective, just move that to the left or the right to make it work. I'm leaving ours on 0 in this example though. Far more important to this image, if we double click the hand tool to go back to full screen side, is of course the vertical perspective. And we're not going to get the whole image in shot. The problem is if we actually start moving the vertical perspective and squaring up the image and getting it all true, we're going to crop the top of the image off. So before we start doing that, let's just bring that back to 0. What we're going to do is reduce the scale, so we make sure we keep the whole image in the frame. So we'll just put in a bit of negative percentage here, take it down to something like 75% or so. That should do the trick. Take scale down to about 75%, and now we can start using the vertical perspective control to sort things out without losing the top of the image. Now all we're looking for is to get these vertical lines on the building parallel to the vertical lines on the grid. Quite a simple task, and we just have to keep moving until we get there. Now that's about right there, I think. Somewhere in the middle 50s, I think about -55 looks about spot on. So for this image it seems that -55 gets us nice and true with our verticals. So if you're using a different picture, just simply check it against those grid lines to make sure you get it spot on. Now the next thing we need to look at is the distortion. This is pincushion or barrel distortion, and most zoom lenses, like the one we've used to take this picture, give some distortion. Now we'll just zoom in first of all, just to fill the frame with our subject so we can see if there's any. It's actually not too bad in this image, but there's always a touch if you look for it. And we're just going to move it. Well, that's the wrong way. We need to go positive. So we're just removing some pincushion distortion. I think that looks about right there. Try and ignore the edges of the frame. Try and just look at the vertical and horizontal lines and check that you've got it okay there. That looks pretty good actually. That looks nice and flat through the frame. So we've got a setting of +6 on the remove distortion slider. And I think that trues up our image really well. I'm just going to zoom in again just so we can see the important part of the picture. Yep, and that's looking pretty good. Okay. Now the final tweak I'm going to make is a bit of vignetting. The sky around the edges of the image could do with a little bit of darkening, just for creative reasons. So I'm going to try and do that with the vignette slider. And if I put in a negative amount, you can see that just helps to focus attention on the central part of the image where the building is. I think that's quite nice there, about -30, something around there. Yeah, that looks good. That's a bit too much, it goes too dramatic, particularly up in the left-hand corner. But a setting of around -30 looks good to me. So we'll go for that. We can play with the vignetting midpoint. If we move it further to the left, we'll create a bigger vignette effect. Further to the right, we'll create a smaller one. I think somewhere in the middle is fine, actually. +50 for the midpoint is absolutely fine. Okay, I think we're just about there. Once you've made all those changes and you're happy with the adjustments, all you need to do is click OK, and then the changes you made will just appear in the normal Photoshop or Elements editing window. Of course, we have a slight problem in that we've got this transparent area all the way around the outside. And in squaring up our image, unfortunately, this is just some pixels that we have to lose. We can't do anything about it. So that's time to use the crop tool. And all we need to do is start wherever we want to, really, but in that corner seems to be an appropriate place. And we just adjust the sides and the bottom of the crop tool just to make everything work as well as possible. I think that sort of thing looks pretty good. If you find your crop tool is snapping to the edge of the image like that, and you don't want it to do that, all you need to do is, while you're actually cropping, hold down the Control key, and it prevents that snap happening. So there we go, something like that looks good. And we'll just bring in the crop just a touch. There we go. A little bit of precise cropping. We'll leave this character in here. And a little bit of sky. That's good. Once you're happy with all that, click the tick or just double click inside the crop tool's bounding box. Then of course you can just double click the hand tool to bring it back up to full screen. And there's our image looking wonderfully square and much better than it was in its original incarnation. The only thing I'd do with this image now to finish off is remove this bit of street lamp that's left. It looks a bit incongruous just hanging there in space. So all I'd do is zoom in on that. Let's just pick up the zoom tool and go in tight on it. And then I'll make a quick selection using the lasso tool. Just draw around it like so. That should do the trick. Then all we need to do is heal that area. So if we pick up the healing brush, there it is, looks like a band-aid. Pick up the healing brush. Brush size of somewhere around 30 pixels should be fine. Hold down the Alt key and click on a clean area around it. Then we just paint over and see how that healing job works. There we go, just release the mouse. Look at that. Perfect result. Hit Control and D to lose those marching ants around that selected area. Then we can double click the hand tool to go back to full screen. And there we have a seamless, perfect result. A lovely square, true building, all done courtesy of the correct camera distortion filter. Well, if you've got Elements 6 or 7 or Photoshop CS3 or CS4, give that a whirl and see how you get on at truing up your architectural pictures. Thanks for watching. See you next time.